Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second video in this series in which we are detailing one of the paintings that we did last video, or the last video in the series. It's a video we created 2 weeks ago. We made some rough paintings in that video. We made 3 paintings. Today we're gonna start detailing with one of the paintings. Well, we're gonna detail the full painting. You're gonna see about 80% of the process. The last bit of detailing I didn't record because the video would become too long, and it's more of the same anyway. Once you start detailing, once you have the big details in, it's just a bit of a repetitive process. You just have to keep refining the painting. As you can see, the first bit of the recording is with the 3 paintings on one canvas, but after a couple of minutes we will switch to the single painting. I cut out the painting and started a new canvas. We're still on the old canvas for now with the 3 paintings. I might do the full detailing videos on the 2 other paintings, or I kind of want to do it on a mushroom one because I really find that very difficult. So I kind of want to do it to practice a little bit more, and it's different from the paintings above. The 2 paintings, the 2 top paintings are basically the same, the top one and the middle one. So yes, we started with detailing. The video is sped up. What you're about to see in the video is about 2 hours and 10 minutes of recording, and you're gonna see it in a little bit less than 35 minutes. So it's been sped up quite a bit, as you can see by the movement of the brush and the tools. I normally don't paint that fast. I paint quite fast, I think, but not that fast. I wish I could, but no, that's inhuman, that kind of speed. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the painting. As you can see, I'm switching the layer in which I'm working on and off to see the difference between the old painting and the new bit on top. I usually paint the new stuff in a new layer so I can switch it on and off to see if it works. I'm working a bit on the grass here, get a bit of green going. But let's first talk a little bit about the technical stuff of this painting. The canvas is still 5,000 pixels wide. When I cut out this painting and pasted it onto a new canvas, I made the canvas 8,000 pixels wide, so the final version of the painting is 8,000 pixels. I'm using a default brush. I adjusted it a little bit. It's a default chalk brush. A different one that I used last time. Well, for the first bit of detailing, I'm using the same brush that I used to make the rough paintings. So it's a kind of a really flat, broad brush, which is a brush that I created myself. Here you can see that I switched to a single canvas. Transition is actually quite smooth there. There are some transitions in the video because I didn't record this in one bit. I recorded several bits, so sometimes you see the canvas suddenly jump. But the first bit of detailing I did with the same brush as I did the painting with, but now I'm painting with a different brush. It's a more squared brush. It's derived from the default chalk brush, with some texture added to it, so we have a nice little bit of texture here. And now I'm really focusing more on the details. I'm zoomed in a little bit to paint out the rocks and things like that. At this point, I still didn't really know what to do with the what's it called, a bit of the castle-y bit in the distance. But soon enough, you will see me start painting it in. And I decided to turn it into a bit of a city, which is built onto the rocks. But you will soon see that soon enough. And yeah, basically the whole thing about detailing is just doing this process over and over and again, switching back and forth between different parts of the painting. Try to pay attention to shadow and light. Where is the where are the shadows? Where is the light coming from? How does that change my my painting, my picture? and well, it's not my strongest skill yet, the lighting and stuff like that. But yeah, I just keep practicing at it and try to keep getting better. So yeah, I'm putting in some more rocks and debris and stuff like that. Yeah, what can I talk about a little bit more? Yeah, I've got some plans in the future for this series. For this this first two parts was just me painting stuff, and we're still gonna keep doing that. I quite enjoy that. It gives me a good reason to paint, and yeah, it's quite fun. But I also want to do some more tutorial-like videos, but not so much a tutorial for, yeah, for also a tutorial for the people who watch, of course, but also a tutorial for me. So a video in which I'm learning about stuff and trying things out. I've got some ideas on how to do that. So I probably want to do the next video on atmospheric perspective and things like that. So and the contrast in the distance and the contrast in things close by. Here you can see that I'm trying to start to get a bit of a city down at the bottom of the rocks. So basically, it's a city surrounding the rocks are surrounded by houses and a city, and the city itself is built up onto the rocks as well. So you are gonna get this sort of epic scale. Well, that's the goal, and I think it turned out quite okay-ish. But I'm gonna try to focus, yeah, on painting, but also on some more technical stuff. So yeah, the next one is probably gonna be about atmospheric perspective, things like that. I probably want to do something on perspective as well. There's not a lot of perspective in this one. I mean, it's a big wide angle landscape, so most of the perspective is gone. So I kind of want to practice a little bit more with perspective myself. I know how it works. I think I can paint stuff and draw stuff in perspective, but I don't do it enough. So that's a good thing to practice with. So yeah, that are basically my plans. Some more technical tutorials, so to speak, and keep it about 50-50, the technical stuff and the painting, the painting stuff, or maybe 2 videos about painting and 1 video about tutorial like video. I'm not sure yet. Let me know if you have any ideas about that, what you think is good to do. And yeah, time will tell, of course. Time will tell. So that's that. I also have the Let's Draw series. Well, I have 1 video on it. The plan is to make it into a series, but there's a bit of an overlap between the Just Draw and the Learning to Paint, because these two go hand in hand. If you want to become a better painter, you have to draw. These 2 skills are just connected to each other, so to speak. But I kind of want to keep going with it, but not in the format. Well, I'm not sure. I kind of like the format. Well, there's not much of a format because this was just 1 video, but I kind of want to continue with it, but I don't know how just yet. I want to keep the content interesting, and I'm not sure if it's gonna be interesting if I do just a little drawing every time. So I have to think about that, what to do. Maybe if we can get some more viewers and subs, we can change it into a weekly or bi-weekly challenge or something. So we pick a subject matter and draw stuff from that subject matter. I'm not sure how we're gonna do that, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm starting to work on the mountains in the distance. There's a bit of snow there. I kind of want it to be sort of temperate, but also quite high, so a little bit of colder environment, not tropical or deserty, but kind of chilly. So I change the overall color later on to a bit of a bit more bluish, to make it look a little bit colder than it does now. And you saw me switch on and off the layer, check my progress basically, and you can see quite a bit of a difference going from now on. There's one thing that I forgot, and I probably should learn to do it, is flipping the canvas. You get used to the painting when you're looking at it, and when you flip the canvas, you are looking with fresh eyes to your painting. So I probably should have done that. That might have caused me to change a couple of things. That's definitely something that I keep in mind for the next one. To regularly flip the canvas to see if it's looking right or not. I probably should check whether recording is still going. Yes, the recording is still going, so we can keep talking. I still have to talk for 20 minutes. Wow, it's gonna be hard. I had some questions from the last video, but I forgot to pull them up. I probably can pull them up somewhere, hopefully. Let me see if I can find them real quick, because I want to address them in this video. Let's see, not here. I had them somewhere. It's quite certain. Yes, here we are. Comments. Yes, there we are. Let me see. Oh yeah, that was a question to talk a little bit more about the technical stuff, the palette selection, the layering strategy. Yeah, that's something we can talk a little bit about. I talked a little bit about the layer strategy that I'm using, but I will talk a little bit more about the layers. I'm basically using just one layer, or two layers, I should say. I got the painting, and the new stuff I usually do in a new layer. Not always. Sometimes when I'm quite confident that what I'm putting down is the right thing to put down, I'll do it. But sometimes I will. Most of the time, I will just paint on a new layer, so I can switch it on and off. Because I kind of like to see the progress that I'm making, and I kind of like to check whether I like the changes that I made, to see if I'm just to check to see the before and the after. I kind of enjoy that. Well, the brush is just a default Photoshop brush. I'm using Photoshop CS4, so that's a really old version of Photoshop. It's about 10 years old. But that doesn't really matter. It's still good software. It just paints fine. I don't know if there are any new features in the new Photoshop with brushes and to make them behave differently, or I don't know if they mix paint, or I have no clue. But I just use Photoshop CS4 and it works fine for me. I don't really currently have the budget to pick any other to get a new version of Photoshop. So and this one is working fine. So why change a winning team? Here you can see me putting in some textures. That's really helping me define the rocks a little bit better. I wasn't happy with the rock formation on the right for a very long time. In the end, I think I made it work a little bit. I'm still not quite there how I want it to be, but I decided that it was okay-ish in the end. But it's not until the very last half an hour in detailing that I got satisfied with it. It's not in this video, but it is in the end. and painting, which I will show you at the end of the video. So there's a bit of a difference between the last bit of the recording and the actual finished piece. But the overall painting is the same. There's just a little bit more detail. Yeah, it's changed slightly, but not that much. Yes, I started to work with textures. It's quite handy to get some teeth on the canvas, to get some structure, some texture. Here's a bit that I skipped. I used a couple of textures for the city on the mountains. I used favela. Is that the right word? Yeah, I think the favelas in Brazil and those big cities, and they get these tiny houses. A lot of poor people live there. Yeah, there you can see me taking one of the textures, and it just slapped them on the mountain, and it looks quite bad currently. But with a bit of painting, it's gonna change into, hopefully, into a city. It's gonna look like a city a little bit. I kind of wanted to keep one of the pillars, keep it a rock, so I brought in some rock textures to make it look rock-like, but it changed a bit towards the end. It got buildings on it as well. Yeah, there's some textures. I was talking about something, or I decided that I had to do something with textures. So here you can see me select a little bit with the lasso tool. I'm going to change the value of the mountain, so to make it go further away, so we get some extra perspective. See, when I turn on and off the layer, it creates some distance. Using some more textures on the rocks in front here. Try different layer settings from overlay and multiply and things like that. There are loads and loads of options, and of course you can't just slap on textures and call it a day. You have to start painting over these textures, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of difference between the stuff that's just painted and the stuff that has only textures. So you've got to blend the textures into the painting. So that's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna start painting over the textures and color picking some of the color from the textures to paint in the stuff that doesn't have a texture. So hopefully it will become what's the name? What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. So it basically looks even, the same on the entire painting. So yeah, I'm using a very old version of Photoshop. I'm also using a very old Wacom tablet. It's also, I believe it's 9 years old now. It still works fine. It's a bamboo, so that's one of the cheaper versions, one of the cheapest at the time. I don't remember what I paid for it. It wasn't a lot, and it works like a charm. It works fine. It hasn't a lot of fancy options like the newer versions, like pen tilt and things like that. Just as a pen and pressure sensitivity, but for me currently that's enough. I set the brush. That's something I can talk about the brush settings. I use as I said before, a modified default brush with a bit of texture. You can just check a box in Photoshop, and you can play a little bit with the texture settings, see how much texture you want. I manually set the opacity of the brush. You can use the 1 to 0 keys on your keyboard to set the opacity of the brush. If you press the 1 key, it's set to 10%. If you press the 0 key, it's set to 100%. So you can switch between those percentages, and I usually grab anywhere. Yeah, usually I'm working with 80 or 90% opacity, and my brush size is set to my pen pressure, but I adjusted it a little bit so that I have a minimum brush size. If you don't do it, you get either you get a very thin line and a and a very thick line and everything in between. But my default line is a little bit thicker than it usually is. You can slide with a nice little slider. You can set the minimum thickness of your brush. So that's the brush settings that I use, and for me currently that works absolutely fine. I struggled a little bit before find some brush settings. I used to paint a lot with my opacity set to my pen pressure, but that didn't really work out for me because I don't know, it just didn't really feel right. Colors got a little bit of how do you call it, washed out, so to speak. But I think I found the right settings for me. Well, they work for me. I mean, everyone has different preferences and different settings, so it takes some time to find the right brush and the right settings, but just keep playing with it, and one day you'll find the right one. Here you can see that I changed the hue to be a little bit more bluish, and I'm bringing in some more textures down at the river. I kind of want to have some rocks there as well. But now the painting looks a little bit colder, so the environment isn't so nice and warm. It's quite chilly down there, and that's what I want to bring forth into the painting. So yeah, that's I think about the brush. Yeah, that's everything. And sometimes I use the soft brush, a very big airbrush. I use for atmospheric perspective, so for fog and stuff like that, to lighten up my painting or to darken certain areas. And that brush I have set to opacity with the pen pressure. But I usually only use 1 or 2 brushes for my entire painting, and that's a default, well, almost a default chalk brush from Photoshop. And you can do it with a round brush, you can do it with a square brush, with a triangle. Just pick one and get used to it and use it. So that's something I might want to do in the future, a challenge in which we pick a different brush that I normally do, like for example the default round brush, and see if we can use that brush to make a painting. Maybe allow ourselves to modify it with the modification options that Photoshop provide, like the brush texture or jewel brush or something like that, and see what we can come up with. But it doesn't really matter which brush you use, just get used to it and start painting. Paint a little bit more, and once you're done, paint even more. Here I'm bringing up some highlights into the city. I kind of want the sun to shine on the roof of the houses in the distance, so here I'm adding some of that sunlight. Not sure if I'm really happy with it. I changed the layers quite a bit, added a little bit more of the sunlight. I also wanted the sun to hit the top of the rocks there, but that didn't really work out the way I wanted. But I changed it later, and I think I got it to an acceptable level. So yeah, we've come quite a far away already from the original rough painting. And we're about 23, 24 minutes in, so that's about an hour and a half in real time, I think. Maybe, yeah, an hour and a half, maybe a little bit more, 1 hour and 3/4 maybe. So as you can see, if you spend a little bit of time on your paintings, you can make a big impact. Add some more grass, add some more rocks, just tiny changes with each brush stroke. But these tiny changes add up quickly. I keep coming back to the city, or the thing that has to become a city, and keep adding more dots and hashes to add a number of houses, add some structures on top of the towers. Taking a sip of my coffee, because, you know, coffee is important. That's our fuel. So yeah, hopefully you know a little bit more about the process by and the technical stuff by answering that question. Do we have any more comments? Yeah, things about simplifying things and indicating faraway details in painting is like painting a forest way back in the distance with a couple of brush strokes. I think, yeah, I think I want to cover that a little bit more in detail into the next video. So I have some time to think about it myself and to practice a little bit with it. Um, it's it's basically yeah. What can I say about it? The closer something is, the more detail and contrast you see. The further away something is, you see less details and less contrast. So objects usually get in a painting get lighter when they are further away from the foreground. So when they are in the background, you can um, add that effect by adding a lot of atmospheric fog, and just don't add too much details in the background, because if everything is detailed at the same level, the painting becomes really flat because your eye doesn't believe that. Your eye is used to seeing more details in the foreground than in the background. So you kind of have to realize that and use that theory and keep that in the back of your head and think, oh, this is far away, so I can get away with not adding too many details. As you can see, the rocks here in the front here are actually quite detailed because they are quite close by. You can see the cracks in the rock. You can see the shadows, the lights. And there's a bit I want to put to the background now. This is actually a perfect way to show this. So I add atmospheric fog, so it's lighter, so it looks further away, and it also gets rid of a lot of detail in that bit of painting. So not only does it look further away because it's lighter, it also looks further away because there is a lot of haze, so to speak, a lot of fog. And the pieces here in front have a lot more contrast. The darks are darker, and the lights are the light areas are lighter. And so that's also how I made that city. I didn't paint any individual house. I didn't go in there, zoom in very to 200, 100, or 200% and paint each individual house. I could have done that, and then you create a city. Here I'm gonna work on the clouds. Gonna talk about that a little bit later. But I didn't do that. I just indicated houses by small brush strokes, tiny dots, dashes, and things like that. And that gives the indication of houses. So your brain is used to processing that information. So when your brain sees that, your brain thinks, "Ooh, that's probably housing. That's probably a structure. That's probably a house. That's probably a church." Things like that. So yeah, focus on the details in the foreground and leave a lot of the details to create a suggestion of details. You can't just throw on a bunch of blobs on a painting and say, well, that's going to be a house. That's a house that looks like a house. No, you have to indicate a house. So your mind, your brain has to be able to distinguish between the different shapes. But I'm gonna try to make a video out of that, an entire video focused on foreground, background, how to separate the two, and also focusing on atmospheric perspective, things like that. Still have to work out how I'm gonna do that exactly, but it's gonna happen, and it's probably gonna. Hopefully, it's gonna be there next week. Sure if I'm gonna make that, but we're gonna try. And that's gonna be a live video, I think. So I'm gonna paint in Photoshop and live commentate on that painting. Here I'm starting to separate different bits of the rock. It's a big blobby rock, and I'm still not sure if at the end I'm happy with what I've done here. But once I did it, I thought, it's actually quite okay, so let's stick with it. I separated different pieces of the rocks there to give a bit of depth to the city as well. So there's a big pillar in front now. There are pillars at the back. So here is something that I did with the atmospheric perspective as well. I lightened area behind object behind this tower, and I darkened the tower itself. It's a two-way process, and now there is a distance between the tower at the front and the towers at the back. And I'm gonna add some more depth to the city part. As you can see, I threw in some clouds. I used the cloud texture. I modified it a bit. I painted over it. I changed the clouds quite a bit actually. I spent quite some time, I think most of the time of the rest of the detailing that's not on this recording, I spent on the sky because I wasn't really happy with it. Here I'm spending some more time on the city. I wanted it to be a little bit bigger, a little bit more epic. The city is huge. It's far away, but it's gotta be big, man. It's a city of millions. Probably should have added some farmlands in the distance as well, because you know the city needs support. At one stage, I wanted to make a road next to the river, but I decided against it because it didn't really feel right. But there has to be some infrastructure to the city, but maybe infrastructure is on the other side of the city. So this area, the area where you're looking from, is quite harsh terrain. So there's not much infrastructure or roads going that way. But we can still sell this ID. We're almost done here. We're at 32 minutes. I think we still have about 2 minutes left. So I'm gonna wrap up this video. Oh, before I forgot to say that in the beginning. If you like this video and this process, please leave a like, comment on it, and subscribe if you want to see more of this in the future. It's quite an adventure for me, and hopefully you want to join me on this adventure to become a better artist, to become a better painter. And yeah, leave a comment if you have any questions. I will try to answer them in the next video, or make a separate video about certain questions. So yeah, thank you for watching and enjoy the last bit of the process. I'm gonna separate a little bit more the city, bring back that mountain off, the last pillar a little bit more. In hindsight, I should have lightened the top bit of it as well, so that bit stood really far away. Now it's still on the same plane as the two big towers on the right. But yeah, it's something that I have to keep in mind for future projects. So the painting itself wasn't only a learning process. This looking back at the painting is also a learning process for me. I hope you enjoy it, and keep painting and keep up the good work. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.